thinking of Breath of the Wild? What if I told you that the industry-shaking game we all fell in love with almost didn't even exist at all? Instead of an open-world masterpiece, we could have had a full-on sci-fi Zelda game. Maybe a Spider-Man style swinging mechanic? Or even entire miniature towns with Link being able to shrink down and explore. In today's video, we're diving into the untold story behind The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and how it could have totally ended up being a radically different game from the critically acclaimed version that we ended up with. From its 2D classic Zelda style prototype to scrapped UFO concepts, yes, you heard me damn right, the journey to what is one of the greatest games of all time was far from straightforward. So, if you like knowing stupid secret stuff about your favorite video games that you had no damn idea of, like and subscribe maybe?
Maybe.
When playing a video game, most of us hardly ever think about what the development process was like to attain the final form of that game. How many complications could have risen during development, or perhaps how many different crappy or even underrated ideas get tossed out from the mix. Breath of the Wild is a game that had a lot of these complications and changes. You'll see why. Development of Breath of the Wild took around 5 years, give or take. It commenced all the way back in late 2011, immediately after the release of the Wii's Skyward Sword, which definitely wasn't my favorite Zelda game. The developers took inspiration from games like Skyrim and Shadow of the Colossus to get that sense of grandeur and exploration. I mean, the game is called Breath of the Wild. And for good reason. I remember the first time I found out about the Legend of Zelda series. This was probably like 2012, when I was head over booty cheeks for the 3DS. I saw this little old game called Ocarina of Time 3D plastered everywhere, but I didn't really give a shit. Look, I wanted Super Mario 3D Land. I also wanted a job and a sense of direction in life. But look where we are now. Eventually, around 2015 or so, I heard about Breath of the Wild from one of the only two other kids who were hardcore Nintendo fans in my grade. I mean, this guy would get the most shit for liking Nintendo and being a baby gamer. Not me though. I also had a PlayStation, so I was safe. This friend told me that there was this insanely innovative new Zelda game coming out for the Wii U, and just hearing the tagline Breath of the Wild kind of gave me shivers. Now, you know what else gave me shivers? Sonic Lost World. God damn, that trailer had me going bananas. I recently played the game for the first time a few months ago on my 3DS, and what can I say but you win some, you lose some. Now, believe it or not, some of the developers on the team suggested making Breath of the Wild a full-on sci-fi Zelda game. They experimented with the idea of aliens and UFOs appearing on the map and even abducting cattle? Which does sound weird at first, but goddamn, the whole idea of Breath of the Wild was to break traditional Zelda convention, so I kinda see why they consider this. I also see why they didn't implement it. Because having giant mechs that could battle it out with laser beams and rockets while Link runs across the battlefield between them maybe sounds a bit too much Megas XLR and a bit too less Zelda.
Many months later.
I stand corrected. See, it's pretty obvious when you pay close attention that this game always had a strong sci-fi element from the beginning. I mean, it is the most technologically themed Zelda game ever. All apart from Tears of the Kingdom. And all of this is still pretty apparent even though it was toned down from the original idea of being full-on Horizon-esque sci-fi to be more of an ancient civilization technology thing, which is still exactly what Horizon is. But you get the point, damn it! Horizon has more robots! Like, take a look at the Sheikah Slate. It's an iPad.
It has a slightly better screen. I don't care.
Look at those musty, crusty, dusty-ass, bum-ass Guardians. Those things give me fucking nightmares for weeks. And look at Link's bike. Which, by the way, almost didn't make it into the game.
Oh, hell no!
See, alongside the strong sci-fi elements, many designs for Link were also considered. Many were scrapped. With this one being the most interesting looking one in my opinion. By interesting, I mean worst. What the hell is this? This looks like Link off the Zod. This looks like Link if Zelda never changes broke bum-ass's life. Brother, this link has been severed. Speaking of dropped, The idea of Link being able to ride a motorcycle initially seemed a bit too young, wild, and free. You know, maybe a tad bit too sci-fi for Zelda. But due to pushback from some of the other developers within the team, specifically the younger developers, they brought it back in the Champions Ballad DLC. Ooh, look at these creepy Guardian designs. Thanks for not feeding onto my nightmare fuel, Nintendo. I wouldn't like these. You know, I really appreciate the devs coming out to talk about behind the scenes stuff like this. I just find it really interesting to think about what could have been and contrasting it to what was. And all this so far is really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what could have been for Breath of the Wild. Game producer Eiji Aonuma had known all the way back since Wind Waker on the GameCube that he wanted a more open world Zelda game with more exploration. And they did kind of try to bring that idea to fruition by having the ocean used as a means to connect the different levels in Wind Waker, just to kind of, you know, shove in that sense of exploration. But unfortunately, they couldn't include too many islands due to hardware limitations. Well, good choice not forcing it when you didn't have the resources to do so. We don't want another Pac-Man World repack. Oh, what's wrong with Pac-Man World repack? What's wrong with murder? The team knew the world was in a way going to be the main character in this game. They wanted to break traditional Zelda conventions, and more so than ever after listening to player feedback on wanting to explore the world that connected the levels, specifically in 2011's Skyward Sword, they needed a seamless feel for this world. And what better way to do this than to model your fantasy open world game after modern day Kyoto? Don't question the Japanese! See, Nintendo's headquarters is based in Kyoto, Japan, and due to this, the game designers were already pretty familiar with the layout of the city, and had a good idea of what it's like traveling back and forth within the city, how long it'd take to get from north to south on foot, how tired you'd be, how hot you'd get, stuff like that. They incorporated it all into designing this game's version of Hyrule. Also, the map ended up being 12 times bigger than Twilight Princess's map, so they couldn't really use that piece of shit for anything. Now, after deciding that the game would feature a seamless open world with a strong, and I mean strong, emphasis on exploration, they said, nuh-uh, we're gonna have to test this on a smaller scale first. How small? Real small. If I didn't see it, I wouldn't believe it, mama. These Nintendo fellas ended up making a 2D prototype Breath of the Wild using sprites from the original Legend of Zelda game. And they did this just to test the most bare-bones version of the mechanics and the world design that they had conceptualized before transferring it onto the full 3D game. It was genius, damn it! It could have done that, Pac-Man World Repack.
God damn it!
The main takeaway from this 2D demo was how allowing different objects in the game interact with each other could produce new and exciting experiences. So they decided to take that concept and really expand on it by developing their extremely advanced physics and chemistry engines for the game. This ended up making the world itself play a big role in the actual gameplay. I mean, for example, metal weapons being dangerous to use in lightning storms, so that always encourages you to keep a wooden weapon even though they're weaker. Or maybe throwing a metal weapon towards an enemy in order to attract lightning towards them and shock them dead, goddammit! Or, you know, being simple and using boulders to crush enemies, or shooting flammable objects to explode, or using the wind from burning grass to propel you into the air. Okay, that's enough. The world is interactive. We get it. Now let's move on, Dinglebat. In my personal opinion, I find that Japanese studios tend to take more risks and procure more unique ideas. I mean, look at Godhead! It feels like I'm the only one in the world who remembers Godhead, and it makes me sad. You know, I find it crazy how the game brought about so much innovation and revolution within the open world genre, yet still had so many features that were left out or cut during the development cycle. Like, for example, they wanted to add miniature towns and give Link the ability to shrink down and explore these towns. I mean, that sounds absolutely brilliant to me. I mean, why didn't this feature make the game? Well, it could have been due to the fact that Breath of the Wild was also a Wii U game. In fact, primarily a Wii U game. A number of features that were intended to be in this game were actually cut due to the hardware limitations of the Wii U, with some of them eventually ending up in Tears of the Kingdom, which is why Tears of the Kingdom just feels so impossible to me. Like, how can a game have everything. It's literally Breath of the Wild with so much more tacked on. Much more interesting abilities like Ascend and Fuse, which make possibilities even more endless. Sky Islands, an entire underground map with everything just being so seamless and working so well together. I mean, the amount of glitches that could be possible in a game like Tears of the Kingdom just regarding the Fuse ability, it's crazy that they made it this polished on the Switch. Who knows, I might make a Tears of the Kingdom video if this one ends up performing well. So, like and subscribe if you want to see me have an existential crisis while talking about the development of Tears of the Kingdom and all the secret stuff that went on behind the scenes. But anyway, back to the features that were cut from this game. Double hook shots. So, if you're familiar with Legend of Zelda, you'll probably know what hook shots are. They're the grappling hooks from Batman Arkham Asylum, but without a stupid bitch screaming riddles in your ear.
Riddle me this.
Oh, hell no!
They toyed and fiddled with the idea of giving Link double hook shots, allowing him essentially become Spider-Man.
Miles.
Because why the fuck not? I'll tell you why the fuck not. Because it would essentially break the game. Hear me out here, or don't, either way is fine. Breath of the Wild's climbing mechanic was a huge part of the game, and the game purposely made the world slow to traverse and get around because it wanted you to properly take in this version of Hyrule and interact with it. This wasn't about getting from one stage to another. It was about experiencing and being immersed in the open world that they created. The magic of the physics and how everything you imagined would probably work. And according to producer Eiji Aonuma, with the hookshot, players could just go anywhere. But in this game, you could do that by climbing and hang gliding already. So, there actually was a lot of internal pressure from the team to retain the double hookshot feature. But Aonuma said, if we put the hookshot in this game, it's not gonna work. We're just gonna have to go back to what we did before. And Breath of the Wild is all about doing new things. Breath of the Wild was initially built with touchscreen features for the Wii U in mind. But developers found that looking back and forth between the gamepad and the screen was low-key distracting, and those features were completely removed when the game came to tandem development across the Switch and Wii U. Certain ideas such as flying and underground dungeons were not implemented because, say it with me, hardware limitations. The Wii U was weak. These ideas ended up being used in Tears of the Kingdom, and to that I say nothing. I say nothing. So, towards the end of its development, the Breath of the Wild team had reportedly grown to around 300 developers, and Nintendo EPD, which is Nintendo's internal studio that develops most of their main big-budget games, had to call in Xenoblade developer Monolith Soft to provide tons of devs to help finish up the game. Nintendo didn't want the Breath of the Wild team to consist of lifelong gamers. Instead, the producers wanted to bring on designers with a wide scope of interest outside of gaming. They wanted fresh ideas instead of trying to improve on what other open world games had already done. Game director Aonuma didn't necessarily want people who were good gamers. He wanted people with interesting life experiences and hobbies. People who loved random mundane stuff, like mountain climbing, scuba diving, watching fucking Garfield, you know, that kind of stuff. Some people even suspect that underwater exploration and gameplay was initially intended to be a part of Breath of the Wild due to players finding unusually detailed coral reefs and fishes in some areas. And while I can't say for sure whether or not this was actually part of the initial plan, I'd definitely love to see it in the next 3D Zelda game. Nintendo intentionally did their best to make sure this game was as radical as possible, and really wanted to derail from traditional Zelda games. They also prioritized ideas and suggestions from newer staff members this time, just to keep things as fresh as possible. You know, it's funny, looking back at all the changes that were made or cut out of the final product, like the proposed sci-fi direction which was heavily toned down, or the darker, creepier tone that was explored, the UFOs abducting cattle, the mini villages and shrinking mechanics, the Spider-Man double hookshot ability, the scrapped Wii U gamepad features, the possible scuba diving, the motorcycle which was almost added, then cut and made it back in the DLC looking different. There's clearly so much that was changed or taken away, and this game could have ended up being an even more radical departure from the Zelda series than it already was. And I think that's really interesting to think about. The Legend of Zelda, run because the fucking aliens are coming in fucking UFOs to fucking steal your family. Goddamn, if we don't get flying horses in the next Legend of Zelda game, I will buy Pac-Man World Repack. I'll do it. Don't test me. Subscribe, mama.